Hello and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Sofronas, and today we're on with Jeff Sauer. Jeff, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jeff Sauer. I'm the co-founder of Measure Holdings Group, which owns the brands Measure You, as you can see from my shirt, ProfitSchool.com, as well as MeasureSummit.com. And so I've been in this industry, the digital marketing and analytics industry, since 2005. I'm an educator. I'm a thought leader, I guess you could say, although you can't really call yourself a thought leader. Other people have to call you that. And I love this industry and I love what I'm doing. So happy to talk about spreading the message about data-driven marketing, everything, good things, bad things, ugly things, whatever it is.
Awesome. Yeah, let's talk about the various businesses that you just listed and what are the different values that they provide to the market.
Sure. So I started out, I had an agency, and the agency was called 3D Marketing. We sold it back in 2021, but that was from 2006 until 2021. I was a owner and a part of that business, and typical marketing agency stuff, helping people with their ads, their analytics, SEO. We even built websites. We did content. We were a full service digital marketing agency. At least we evolved into that. And so my domain was anything around a web presence and knowing what happened and getting traffic to it. And so pretty broad, and had a lot of fun doing that. And so that's really how I got started. But then while I was there, I realized that I liked the teaching aspect of it more. I liked speaking about it. I liked writing about what we are learning. Because when you're in an agency, you have your clients and your employees or your team members that you get to talk to, but you don't always get to pollinate your ideas. Or if you do something cool, you want to tell the industry. And so I tried to become a voice of the industry by blogging and speaking and end up being successful at that. So I started a blog with my name on it called Jeffalytics. And Jeffalytics was just me talking about analytics, Google Analytics and stuff like that. And really rode that wave. Got lots of people going to it, people commenting on it, talking to me, Twitter conversations, everything. Started teaching, turned that into a teaching gig at a university, teaching gig at a local trade school in Minnesota, where I'm from. And have had millions of people read my articles and learn this stuff from me. And that evolved into an online course business that was called datadrivenyou.com, where I taught people Google Ads, Google Analytics, Meta Ads, pretty much anything that had to do with the Google suite of marketing tools for measuring marketing. And last year, I merged with another company to form Measure Holdings Group, and that was called measurementmarketing.io. We merged that with Data Driven You, and now we're called MeasureYou.com. And it's basically the same playbook, just a little bit different delivery method. We do a lot of our courses live now. We have a very thriving and supportive community with mentors who help get your questions answered. But the whole idea is if you want to measure your marketing, then we are the people to do it. So that's what Measure You is. Profit School is really about how to build an AI first business. So a lot of people who go through Measure You and they become successful digital marketers, measurement people, they want to start their own business as a freelancer or an agency. Since that's my background, I teach them how to create a business that's profitable, that sustains their lifestyle and that gets them to where they want to go. But very recently, we've pivoted to just being AI first. So we don't teach traditional business methods. We teach traditional business methods with an AI first spin. So basically, how do you build a business without having to hire a ton of employees? Or the people you do have on your team, they're very resourceful in using AI. And then Measure Summit's a annual, at least as of right now, an annual conference that teaches people measurement. So it's an analytics conference. It's the place to be. We get about 10,000 people a year that go to it. Speakers from big brands, speakers that are household names in our industry are all involved with Measure Summit. And so those are the three different brands we have. They're related. We call them sister sites because it's about 80% overlap between audience A, B, and C. But there's also room where if you just wanted to watch a measurement conference or if you wanted to do that, you wouldn't have to interact with the other brands. You can just go to Measure Summit and learn about the latest things in measurement.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the synergy. And something I'm noticing is that a lot of the people that are successful in building these businesses hop onto what is the next big thing quite early and really dive into it, learn it, and then focus on teaching it. And I've seen that as a model after over 100 episodes here. That seems to be a winning model is look at the industry, look at what's coming, become an expert in it early when there's less competition, and then really become a thought leader in that domain. And I see that you're pivoting to AI, and that's this new domain within marketing, within business generally. I guess my question is that a sort of model that you keep in mind when you're thinking about the next venture to dive into? And I guess what parts about AI or what can you tell us more about these new domains that are being created in
Yeah,
marketing?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if it was very strategic the first time I did it because, like in 2005, I went into digital marketing and SEO and PPC because nobody would call me back about traditional jobs like other types of advertising. I couldn't get a web design job. I couldn't get a job for my life. And so I went into it because it was the only thing that people would accept me because even though I had no experience, nobody else knew what they were doing. So I had first mover advantage before knowing what first mover advantage was. So it was just a happy accident. And I've been able to do that for a long time. And as the industry evolves, we just keep on evolving with it, getting more strategic, getting more cross platform, that type of stuff. But it is easy to get comfortable in that area where you're like, okay, I've been doing this. I'm an authority in analytics. My business partner is an authority in this area. People know about us. And so do you just ride that forever or do you go into new things? And honestly, it was we were taking like a cautious approach with AI in the last few years. Everybody plays a chat GPT. Everybody uses it to write an email. And you're like, actually, this email's not very good. I need to babysit the AI large language model. I'm not getting consistent results. And just tucked it aside as this is cool, but it was more of a novelty. It wasn't until late last year, early this year that we decided that we had a wake up call by going to a conference. It was a Perry Belcher conference. And he's, if you're not doing AI, you won't have a business in 2 years to 5 years. And so that accelerated my timeline. I thought I had 10 and I was like, okay, I'm in my 40s. I'll just ride this thing out and see where it goes. And then maybe I can get into AI. But that accelerated my timeline from being like 2 years to figure this thing out. And everybody's going to be the same thing till I have a month to figure this thing out. And that was really where the pivot happened. And I will be honest with you, it was the right move. I would call it a pivot. I don't like pivots usually to me mean that the other business isn't doing very well. So you got to throw the business away and then you got to pivot into something new. We're actually maintaining both. We're really just we're expanding, extending versus pivoting. A pivot. So to me, I don't know if it's a full pivot where like we're just abandoning the Measure You business. That's there. It's working. People are still passionate about it. It's a thriving industry. But we see a much higher growth opportunity in AI, and we see that's the future of business. So it's let's let Measure You do its thing. We have a professional team managing it, working on it. Me and my partner are really focusing on this AI in order to get our skills up to be ahead of the curve. Like you said, I think that it's not something where you need to have 5 years of experience here because nobody realistically has 5 years of experience with AI. If their version of AI is a large language model like ChatGPT, the most you could have is 3 years of experience now. So it's okay, then we're all there. Let's focus more on who can get the best results. And so we do results first AI, which is can we use this thing to get a better result than we could have gotten on our own or with employees or hiring? And the funny thing is, 6 months ago, maybe 50% of the time you could get an okay result. Now it's 80 to 90% of the time you can get a better result than if you would have done it on your own or if you would have hired a consultant to do it. And that's what's cool about it is it's like the stars just aligned here. So I don't know how strategic it is. I think it's just more preservation, like self-preservation. I don't think anybody's gonna have like the career you had is not gonna be there unless you're in the top 1% of your field, maybe 10% of your field, but most like between the top 1 to 10% of your field. It won't be there in 5 years in the information economy. I think we're gonna enter a brand new economy. I'm not sure what it's gonna be called. I can't prognosticate too much on it, but that's going to be the result of what we're talking about here is that it's going to be a whole different economy than what we've known for the last 40 or 50 years in the information economy because of AI.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm hopeful for it because I'm more of a generalist. I think you probably are too, given the wide scope of everything that you've been teaching. Marketing measurement spans so many different tactics. You have to be a generalist. I think that AI favors generalists because it allows you to go deeper, whereas versus a generalist will have a broad knowledge, and then AI allows you to go deeper in any of the domains. And so you just have a you can cover so much more work and do provide so much more value versus those who just focus on one particular skill. I think those are the ones that you really have to be in the top 1%
Yep.
because you're in this race against AI for who can completely master the domain first. And then it's a matter of time. But if you can have a broad understanding of an entire field and use AI to have the depth of knowledge whenever you need it, then that's the people that are going to be the ones harnessing the AI
Yeah.
and using it to run, for instance, an entire marketing org with just a couple of people. but they have to understand all the different components of that marketing org in order to do that. I do think that this new economy will greatly favor generalists over specialists. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest pivots because previously, over the last 40, 50 years, we've been favoring specialists in terms of career growth, salary, all of that. Like typically, you have the data scientists, you have just like in any field, you're going to have specialists typically out earning over, broadly speaking, generalists outside of, let's say, the executive level, where that's a hybrid. So, yeah, I think that's really interesting. Can you give us like a high level of how the day to day work of marketers and maybe marketing analytics people will change with AI?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is speculation, right? So I'm going to be wrong on some of the things that I think. And just so that everybody knows, like, we don't know the future. It's a pretty uncertain future, but it is fun to speculate. So don't take this as I know this is going to happen. This is just my aversion, right? I like to tell a story. That's how I've always been as an analyst. I like to get as much information as I can to tell a story, knowing that story is only as good as the information I have. So if new information comes tomorrow, it'll be different. But as you're saying, like, I definitely agree with it's interesting, like the generalist versus specialist. When AI first to me means that you consult AI to see if you can get the answer first versus another person. So if you're a generalist, meaning that you have a wide set of skills, maybe you're T-shaped where you're like pretty good at one thing, but you're covering everything. You're a marketing manager, which I've in a university setting, I've trained 1,000 people who have a marketing manager position. And their biggest problem to me is, Jeff, I can't do it all. How am I supposed to do ads and write for my business and know the analytics piece and know how to do social media and do all these best practices, send emails? I am one person. I'm the only resource. Now, if they're AI first, they might have had to hire a consultant, or they might have gone to Fiverr and gotten somebody to tag their website with Google Analytics. They might have gotten somebody to write the emails for them and use the budget for that. Now, for $20 a month, that's the only budget you need in order to get better than they would have been with $5,000 worth of outside resources to get things done. So yes, a generalist who goes AI first can, for $20 a month tools, be better than who they would have hired. That's like today. That's a today thing. I feel very confident in saying that $5,000 worth of traditional consultants would not be as good as $20 chat GPT for that marketing manager position, for that generalist. So you're absolutely right there, is that if you hold that position as a generalist in an organization and you're the one marketer, then I think you can be world class at many things as without having the world class skills. So that's what employees will be. Like that there will be fewer employees at any organization, and they're all going to be maybe generalists, but they're all going to be able to do these things. They're going to have a wide set of skills. Specialists, they'll be the ones that have the consulting. They'll be the consultants that you bring in. Hey, I want a consultant. And now a consultant, usually their capacity controlled by how many hours they can do. If you're a consultant, you can only do 3 clients. The best 1% of consultants can have 20 clients now. There's no limit. If they're giving people reports and they're doing stuff, they just put that into Chat GPT as well. Their proprietary stuff, they create that. And now they're taking on 20 clients without having to add staff. It's amazing. So the best people are going to be way better than ever before. It's going to be really hard if you don't have skills or you don't even understand how to assemble things and you can't coordinate. What job are you going to have? You might have to become a generalist consultant that is the person who gets $1,000 a month from the marketing manager, or you're working with local businesses who have this infinite need. And you're like, hey, I'm going to take every massage parlor in my area and do their marketing like that. But I think there's going to be a lot more contractors and a lot more subcontractors. There's not going to be as many employees because you're not going to need as many. And that's really where the economy is going to go. And then I don't really know what happens if somebody doesn't have experience or skills. I don't really know where they fit into it. I feel really not bad necessarily, but I feel the pain of a new college graduate. Like they're not hiring college grads anymore at the rate they used to. It's a really bad economy. I don't know what's going to change it. What are you going to have them do? Knock door to door locally, have them be like in charge of fleets of robots, have them be plumbers. Like I'm just not sure what the jobs are going to be. And so that's part of where I think that I'm just not sure, but I like your observation there. Now, on a practical perspective, we have this framework called the measurement marketing framework at Measure You. And it basically, the way that it works is that most people do marketing measurement, which is they do marketing first and then they try to get numbers to make it make sense. We do measurement marketing, is where you start with your result that you want to measure, and then you do marketing that supports that. So it's a lot more strategic, a lot more methodical. There's a framework you follow, like a 9-step framework. Last year, I would tell people it takes 90 days to implement our framework. Now I'm in using ChatGPT. We've trained ChatGPT to understand our framework and it knows it from our public resources. it can give you a plan that you can take 30 days and you can condense it down into getting your code and everything for like in 30 minutes. And so if you're a generalist and you want to do measurement marketing from measure, you can actually use ChatGPT it will tell you exactly how you need to tag your site using our free resources and our membership, just our free stuff, and it will give you that plan. Then you get it onto your site. Yeah, maybe you still need to use somebody on Fiverr to actually put the code on your site, but you're like 90% of the way there with your strategy just by using this stuff. And then we exist instead of having you take a 20-hour course to learn this stuff. You're actually just attending our live workshop or our live Q&A sessions. We call them labs, where you can get somebody who's done this 100 times to tell you exactly what you're doing right or wrong on the spot. So it's 1 hour of your life and you can get this stuff installed versus like a 90-day consulting program. And so that's the really cool thing is that we're just condensing the time to getting the result, to getting a better result. And I think that's just where the world's heading is that. So yeah, the code is in ChatGPT, how to analyze stuff. There's these agents or chat custom GPTs as they call them in ChatGPT that's like an analyst. Upload your file and we'll tell you how to understand it. All these things are happening. So you have a workforce at your side right now. Problem is that you might not have a strategy or know that the strategy is proven. And that's where actually I guess we're pivoting our measurement business too from being a pure course business to being a coaching business, coaching you through it and helping you do it so you get the result you're looking for. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very astute. And regarding one of the things that you mentioned, I think that for fresh college grads, like you said, it's a very tough economy. And the new generation, like Gen Alpha, I think that the best bet for anybody who's just getting out of college is to be as entrepreneurial as possible. There's so much opportunity to leverage AI to build applications, different SaaS businesses. And this is the younger generations are more entrepreneurial, so this is a natural fit for a lot of them. And I would just say start churning out as many different businesses as you can and see if anything sticks right now. And that's probably one of the best this is one of the best times to do that because we're in this like almost possibly a better opportunity than even the internet being
Yeah.
launched and popularized. And Mark Cuban made billions on a streaming site. He literally just streamed sports games or whatever on audio and made like billions. So think about how simple that sort of idea is. And the internet allowed that to be worth a tremendous amount of money, and now with AI, you can build something 1,000 times more advanced than that, not need a lot of the technical resources that were previously needed with the internet as in terms of hiring a bunch of technical people to do things. So I think that the opportunity is bigger than the internet right now in terms of entrepreneurship and figuring out different applications for AI. So while the career and on the other hand, when we're talking about the career world, I think that businesses don't have the resources to train people on what AI first is. And so I think that they're using the more experienced people to figure out a model for how do we integrate AI into our business. And then in, I don't know how long, let's say maybe a year or two, when integration of AI into businesses is a little bit more built out and they can start to build training resources around it, I think that the market will open up more for early college grads. But it's like when you're hiring right now, how do you hire somebody when you don't even know how they're going to use AI or how to teach them how to use AI for the business? The companies are still trying to figure them out. And then if you hire them and you teach them all of the older ways of onboarding and how to do the job, then you're going to have to just retrain them in a year's time
Yeah.
when they do figure out that AI model. So we're in this somewhat inconvenient gap for new hires where the way that you do your job will be changing. And so they're relying on the more senior people to figure that out and then turn that into a playbook to hire the new grads. So I would say for new college grads, go entrepreneurial and really go try to build as much as you can in this time, upskill on AI as much as you can, and that will increase your chances of being hired in the short term as well. Just being
Yeah.
a super AI forward, get your GitHub up and running, start to put projects out there and show this is definitely an economy that will favor anybody that's really good at AI.
Absolutely. Yeah, as I mentioned in my career, I graduated in like 2003 from college and I couldn't get a call back from any job. There was no jobs because it was after the dot-com bust and I had a computer science degree and it's like nobody was hiring it or they're going against people with 5 years of experience out in Silicon Valley who moved back because they and everybody's looking for the same jobs. And I became an entrepreneur earlier than my plan. Like I was planning on doing it after 8 years or 10 years in the workplace. I did it in a year and a half because I didn't have a choice. Combination of debt and like the calling. And it was back then I had to provide services because there wasn't really a lot of business models around the internet. Now every business model would work on the internet. There's not probably not going to be another equivalent of the dot com bust because that was like hype and money going into non-real things that had a huge expense base. So like the expense base was really where that investment went into hardware and the infrastructure. This hype is around software that and the infrastructure is basically free or next to free for the end user. Vibe coding, all these things are so cheap that yeah, you can create a business that makes you $3,000 a month just by just from vibe coding and having a hookup for a payment to a payment processor and an idea. And so that's amazing. Like I could never have done that 20 years ago. Like it was impossible or more than 20 years ago. Now it's just there. And so that's the cool thing about it is that this is going to force your hand, like you said. You might as well embrace it and turn it into a career path and into your identity, which is what I had to do. Now it's like you get to do it. That's how I look at it. Now it might not feel that way if you're graduating from school and your parents sunk 100 grand into more than that now, 200 grand into school. You're like, oh, I get to do this stuff. But man, that's a good place to be where you just get to go to this place where it's uncertain, but you can make more money than maybe I'll ever make in my career if you just hit it right, one thing. And you don't have the legacy that we're trying to support. I mentioned we're trying to support a legacy of teaching analytics for 20 years. That's totally different than having nothing to fall back on. It means you don't have to you don't have to pivot. You're just everything is a pivot. Everything is just going forward. And that's got to be pretty cool. And that's like a gift. You only get that once in your career usually. And so if that's what you graduate to, heck, man, you can really compound that money a long way and have a really wealthy, both health wise, actual money, and just a wealthy way of owning your time because you don't need to exchange for time for money with AI nearly as much. You can exchange AI for money, really. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. So, speaking of pivoting, I want to pivot away from AI for a moment. I want to ask you about one of the most challenging parts of marketing measurement, which is upper funnel and brand measurement. So, how do you, from a high level, measure things like brand awareness, the impact of upper funnel campaigns that generally generate impressions on things like sales?
Yeah. Yeah. So I will say that I'm not like a media mix analysis type person. So like I'm not an expert in that area. I've been around it a lot. I know how people do it, but I can't tell you like here's exactly what the method is and here's the science behind it. But I've done enough advertising that I know that there's a few things that I think are true or that I've seen to be true from the data. And that is that if you turn off your top of funnel advertising and your bottom of funnel tanks, top of funnel is better than you think and it's probably getting underreported. Right? And that's almost always the case. Like just to a T. Hey, I stopped advertising my brand on Google. Why aren't we getting sales? Hey, I stopped running ads because they weren't getting an ROI. Why aren't we getting sales? There is a correlation. Generally speaking, top of funnel is going to be the least efficient though. On a per click metric, on a per thousand impressions metric, it's always the least efficient thing. So the metrics can just, but if you just live blindly by these metrics, you'll always want to turn it off, even though it doesn't account for these intangibles. Now, there are attribution platforms and attribution models out there. Meta ads is going to take credit. Their default window for attribution is impressions or view throughs, right? And they're going to want to extend that as long as possible. You saw this ad at any point you bought, they want to do that correlation. They want to take credit for it. Problem ends up being a lot of times Google also wants to take credit for it. And if you're in market everywhere, everybody wants to take credit for it. Yeah, and the numbers don't add up. So if you were to like look at the Google Analytics attribution models, how does it equal more than 100%? And it always does, right? Your meta ads and your Google ads are going to equal more than 100%. How is that possible? And it's ultimately trying to in trying the best way they can in order to help you understand these things are valuable. Now, turning it off is never the answer entirely. It almost always tanks. Managing it though is the important thing. Are there ways that you can get better impressions than others? Yeah. Paying attention to what you do. So instead of doing a broad campaign on the entire internet, have some exclusions. Like exclusions are awesome in the Google ads or the meta ads. It means accounts you don't want to advertise on, videos you don't want to advertise on YouTube, channels you don't want to make sure you want to make sure your ads don't show up, websites you don't want your contextual ads to be on. Those exclusions are always a good way to go because these systems are greedy. They want as much data and they want to make as much money as they can. This is like an ad platform, what I mean by system. And so Meta Ads wants to make as much money as it can. And they're going to say, if I put you on a dumpy website that you would never would show your grandma and they put you on there, they're going to do that anyway because they want to make you as much money as possible. And so having some kind of level of control can usually eliminate your waste by maybe 50% just by excluding things, knowing where your stuff is going, making sure that it's there. Now, it's harder to do than ever with automated bidding, with stuff like performance max campaigns, with black box algorithms. They're basically going more towards that and taking away your granularity. Granularity is usually the way that you combat greed, the way that you combat lack of impressions, and you meet in the middle. So if that makes sense. So hold out your media and just see how bad it tanks. And if it tanks, that means that top of funnel is working. And then if you want to improve your top of funnel, try to get granular when they actually want you to be opaque. They don't want to show you anything. Get as granular as possible and see if you can find a way to make that happen.
Yeah. And then speaking of exclusions, I think an important one is also for things like PPC or for Google search engine up management, having exclusions for where you're performing really well organically. So not over investing in these sort of inevitable user journeys where people are calling your business out by name and searching for it with high intent. And then Google obviously wants to capture that and pay for it so that it can claim that sale. But we know intuitively that a lot of those would happen organically. And so making sure not to overinvest in more or less inevitable user journeys.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of studies on that, and Google's done studies too. Generally, it's additive, at least if you're bidding on your brand name for paid and organic, you're getting more coverage. You're getting in the top. Those are usually cheaper clicks. But yeah, I understand that. You got to monitor it and make sure that makes sense. That's another holdout test you can do. Turn off brand and then turn it back on and see if it's working. But generally, that does add to the equation and it's a good use of your budget if you can do it. But you have to monitor all this stuff. You can't just take it blindly just because Google published a study. It's best to use your own data or have an agency test that stuff. Like, hey, give me a week where we don't do this and let's see if there's a different performance.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Are there any solutions in the market for more granular connection between impressions and sales, or are impressions generally this anonymous group that maybe are tied to by a general audience?
Yeah, I mean, there's the attribution platforms will claim that they can do it. Whether they can or not is another story, but there's a lot of things that will claim they can do it. Generally, it's as good as you tag. Like tagging as far as like your UTMs. A lot of them will use UTMs to tie it out. They'll use cookies. They'll use whatever they can to tie it together. Problem is that impressions are usually proprietary to the ad platform you're on. So there's no UTM on an impression because they're not clicking. It's not in your own analytics data because of that. So even if you use like a Helios or any other type of platform, it has to be tuned in to the point where they're getting a pixel hit or they're getting a hit while you're doing impressions. Now, again, an impression means that it's still staying on somebody else's website. That's still happening on Facebook's app. It's still happening on Instagram. It's still happening on a website. And then when Google can log that in the ad platform that they served it, but they're not like cooking this person necessarily for you. There is an attribution gap. Once it gets into your own platform, it's a lot easier because you have the UTMs, you can do your own attribution. But but with the iOS updates where it's like apps are not tracking with the crackdown on third party cookies, it's there. It's just more challenging than ever. A lot of companies will use server side tracking as a way to get some of their data back because you can do it in a way that's not blocked by browsers and you can do it in a way that allows you to collect more data and it's a little bit more proprietary because it's on your server or a server that you're hosted by a third party. It still doesn't solve the impressions problem. So again, that's a little bit outside of my area of expertise, but it's ultimately there are things that will claw back your impressions, but they usually have to be pretty aligned with an ad platform in order to get that data. And then you still have to it really only matters your impression data when you can tie it to your back end sales.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It's an ongoing challenge, and there's this constant push and pull of privacy regulation, walled gardens, And I'm curious to see how it changes in the future. Do you think we're moving more towards the privacy ecosystem, or do you think that the private market will find a solution that still allows for granularity while preserving privacy?
So I just did a course with User-Centrics. They make CookieBot, and it might maybe by the time this episode goes out, it'll be live on their site, but it's called privacy-led measurement marketing. So it's our framework, but with privacy led. And the funny thing is the measurement marketing framework we have, it doesn't really suffer from a lack of from privacy as much as other things because we've never really talked about absolutes. We've never said you use analytics to know there's 100 customers. You should use your e-commerce tool to know that you had 100 sales. You should use your hub, whatever you knew 100 leads from HubSpot, not from your Google Analytics. We talk about trends and patterns. Like, is it going up or is it going down? And then you have to do some extrapolation. And if you want to get to absolutes, if 60% of people deny cookies on your website, that means that only 40 of 100 conversions are ever going to make it into your Google Analytics. But the reality is, if it was 98 out of 100, why would your decisions be all that different? Trends and patterns would indicate that about 25% is coming from source A, 25% from source B. Like, it's not that, like, you just extrapolate a little bit. Yeah, it actually, I think it's freeing because a web analytics tool was never meant to be absolute. JavaScript has been broken. JavaScript's been turned off on 10% of browsers for my entire life. So using JavaScript to track things is never meant to be perfect or to work. Now with server side, it's not relying on JavaScript. It's whatever language you want it to be because it's actually like it's part of your server. So it's part of your, I don't know, not to get into too much of a rabbit hole. It's not actually on your server. Usually it's like a server in your server. So it frames in basically but it's done server side. So you have control over it and you can do whatever you want to do. You can use like your programming language to track things. You can send Google Tag Manager hits. Server side tracking gets you as close to 100% of data as you've ever been before. And so that's how companies are getting more toward the absolutes, knowing that they don't have the trends and patterns. So you can augment your Google Analytics data with server side. You can augment especially your attribution. Like server side tagging is how Facebook or Meta ads wants you to do their conversion tracking because you're using the conversion API and it's working really well. So that's how you get most of your data back is going server side. But again, JavaScript has never been like people think that it's magical, but if they don't turn it off or if it doesn't hit, it's a very inefficient technology. I started programming in JavaScript in 1999. It's been around since 1995, I think. So it's like this is like a 30-year-old technology, and we're using that to say that somebody bought from me. It's crazy. So I'm glad that this forced like us to get more updated technology, and really there's a correlation between server-side tracking and the cookies in JavaScript getting blocked more, or cookies especially getting blocked more. And so you're getting your data back, but it takes way more work. It's no longer just put a piece of code on your site and it works. You actually have to think about it. You have to be more deliberate, which again feeds into measurement marketing as opposed to marketing measurement.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, this has been a great conversation. I want to thank you, Jeff, for joining and talking about all things marketing. And I'm sure there's a lot more we could talk about. So we should have a follow up episode in the next few months.
Yeah, it sounds
But
great.
yeah, I want to thank you so much for joining again. And thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks for having me.